Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by this supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. So muted. Here we go. Boy, there'll be phone calls about that tonight, won't there? Yep. We got a little club out there. We're going to talk about it. I got you, Ted. Thank you, darling. Hello, sweetie. How are you? Okay. So y'all know me, and you know that I often make mistakes like that. So I want to go ahead and start again. Are you kidding me? I echo, hello, all you wonderful gatekeepers. That's what we are. There we go. Hello, baby. Hello, Jamie. Hello, are you kidding me? Ted. Hello. Hello, Donnie. Hello, Ann. Hello, all you wonderful people to come in here early. So I don't know what's going on. I'm hoping I'm not, in fact, getting in your dinner and all that stuff. But here's what. Last night I was just not in the right frame of mind to do the show. And hey, Aunt Edna, and I had some things pop up, and I decided I wanted to sit, with my family, and I didn't want to throw out, like this half baked thing because I had a certain way I wanted it to go. Hello, Lynn. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, and did I say hi to you, darling? I hope I did. Welcome. So, uh, mods, if you would just, I need to concentrate for just a minute, and if you would just welcome everybody in here. We have Black Op mods here. A little housekeeping right up front. If you like the show, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, you know what you got? You know what you do? There's a little thing where it's a thumbs down. You can give it a thumbs down and go. Okay. That goes for listeners and everything else that's out there, because here's the thing. It's a free world, and you should be able to choose what you want, and you go where you like, and you go in the chat that you like to be in. And I absolutely love my chat. And a couple weeks ago, I tried to do a thanks for my chat. Things went a little awry. Hey, Jilly, things went a little awry, and that's okay. Things happen like that. It didn't startle me more, at all. I'm just saying that it was unfair to the listeners and unfair to the people that gather here to basically. Thank you, James. Right? Isn't it? Isn't it amazing? But there's no screens on the window, James, and it gets a little cold. There's no glass, and it's just empty frames, right? But no, that's not really my house, honey. Those are really my skulls, though. You can kind of see them disappear. But no, I don't live in a castle. I wish I did. I guess. I don't know. Grass is always greener till you jump the fence, right? I do. I love the windows myself, but it's not my house. It's just a green screen. And if I took it off, all you'd see behind me is a green screen, which the new kitties, Spirit and Boo, have decided they were going to climb up. So if you see a cat crawling across the castle walls, that would be mine. And they had their first little vet visit today. So listen, no, I wanted to tell you guys. Last night I didn't quite have my show blocked out the way I wanted. I had a specific way because I had other shows set up to go with it. So what I figured I'd do is, since Steve and I are going to we will be here at 8 o'clock. Steve and I just got off the phone with him, and it's super cool, right, James? I love it. So it's kind of my permanent little dealio there. I just think it's really cool. But so this is the thing. Um, So I didn't do it last night. I decided to do something else. I wanted to give myself a little time to kind of structure it the way I wanted, because I had a specific way I wanted it to go. So obviously, we're talking about Lizzie Borden. Now, this was the thing about Lizzie Borden for me. Um, I never really got big in. It's not like I went in there and read a lot of books on it or anything like that. It's just something that's popped up throughout this genre for a long time, and eventually over time she's really become, hey Yvonne, welcome, she's become even like a Halloween character. I think even Disney has a Lizzie Borden popping out with an axe. She's been on, I know she's been on The Simpsons and probably Family Guy, and pretty sure South Park, a couple other things. There's been some mini series, and there was what I thought was a really good movie, um, was the Elizabeth Montgomery, Bewitched, and it was 1975, I believe. It was NBC or ABC Movie of the Week, and actually, in that movie, I can tell you, because I've been listening, honest to God, the transcripts from the trial. Because when I go in there, guys, I try to dig up information for you, and try to give you the facts, and try to give it to you as straight as I possibly can. So it seems that movie really used a lot of the actual transcripts. And I know my hands are nasty. I've been working. So, please don't start getting behind the scenes and calling because you're worried about, the fact that I didn't, my nails aren't right or something like that. Because, again, we're going to talk about this group that's so worried about my podcast. But anyway, I wanted to make sure, what was in that movie. Did we like it? did we like it? I really liked it. I thought Elizabeth Montgomery did great. Does anybody know which? Hey, Sasha Bell. Does anybody know which movie I'm talking about? It was Elizabeth Montgomery. I think it was called just Lizzie Borden or something like that. In 1975. It's actually free on YouTube, and I should have grabbed the link for you and stuck it in the description. I haven't done that yet because I'm also trying to set up two podcasts for tonight, give you guys a double header because I feel like I really let you down last night, and I don't like to do that. Yep, brass balls come to mind. We're going to talk about some brass balls, Aunt Edna. We're going to talk about it. So that movie really took a lot, like I said, from the double bubble. That's right, Ted. Double bubble, toil and trouble. So it really took an awful lot out of the actual transcripts. But there was something else to it. If you guys saw that movie, it was pretty good, right? Are you kidding me? So you know what I'm talking about when they tried to figure out how Lizzie did it. Now, see, that's the problem. When you start getting through the timeline and you start getting through all of the stuff, and it's really deep when you start digging in there and you find out what this really happened. Wow, this is crazy. So there was a portion of that movie where they tried to figure out how she could have done it in the timeline that has been basically stated all at 100 and almost 130 years, I think we're at, right? Yeah, where she actually, Jilly, did it in the nude. Yep, there you go. Makes sense to you. Yeah, and Edna, it kind of did to me too. Made sense. But here's the kicker. If you listen to the transcripts of the trial and you read what the first people there, which was the doctor from across the street, Dr. Bowen, and yeah, it was really good, Lynn. I thought so too. But and again, as far as the transcripts of the trial, and they did spend a lot of time on the trial and the way she acted and every movement she made. Hey, Paradox, welcome in. Um, right, Ted. Every move she made, what she wore, everybody had something to say about. She wore navy blue. I think she should have wore black. Of course, everybody had some nitty pitty things to say about it. But the basic thing is that they said that she did it naked. Now, if you read the transcripts of the people that were first there in the house, so the first people there were Mrs. Churchill, who came in across the street and saw her first standing at the screen door, and we'll go through all this, and it won't be as jagged and all over, but I wanted to tell you what my focus was. There's Mrs. Churchill, and of course, Bridget, the maid, and then Dr. Bowen, and then eventually, more official people started showing up. If she was naked and did this, okay, which again makes sense, it would get the blood off her, and she could have put her clothes on. Now, keep in mind, clothes were not the same as they are now. Not so easy. Thank you so much, Lynn. How nice of you. Please hit that love button. Thank you so much, and leave a comment. Keep it civil if you can. And I certainly appreciate everybody. Oh, here we go. Hot girls get them. Ted, where's your wrench? Woo, you're early today. There you go. We got them. Who got them? Ted. Ted got them. Boy, you're running a good record, sweetie. Look at you. Quick on the draw, Ted Branson. There you go. Black Ops mods, ladies and gentlemen. So anyway, get back to my thought. It occurred to me. Now, again, please understand, I want to put a disclaimer out here. We are talking about true crime. I am not going to exploit these people and show a lot of, close up crime scene photos and stuff like that. I just don't think that's I think it's tacky, again, because these poor people have been exploited so much. But there will be a few things shown here because I am going to show you a little documentary I thought was very interesting. And there are some. But I want you to think of this. Hey, Fast, welcome in, darling. I want you to think of this. If she had done this, and she stood over her father. If you're familiar with the case, Abby was killed first around 9 a.m. upstairs on the second floor in the guest room. She was hit 11 times, I believe. No, excuse me. She was hit 18. They're not sure, between 17 and 19 times. I mean, come on. After one or two, it's overkill anyway. Her father, 11. Okay. Now, if that had happened with the way, and it's not an axe, it was a hatchet. So the way you would have to, hey, Kevin, welcome in. The way you would hit, everything's coming up and going this way. Blood splatter going that way. You can see the walls and everything. Okay. I see it on the wall. There would be brain matter, bone, and blood in her hair. If she did this naked, how did she wash her hair in the same amount of time? Hey, Bumpy, welcome, say hi. And how did she get it dry before everybody got there? They didn't have blow dryers back then. Say hi. This baby got a perfect score. So that today got shots in the butt for Christmas, didn't you, baby? Little spirit. Say hi to everybody. Send them love. Give them love. Tell them I got perfect score. Vet said I had perfect eyes, perfect teeth, perfect little beans. Said he was going to be big. I asked the vet how big. His eyebrows went up, and he took a dramatic pause. And you know what he said? Big. I don't know what that means, but I think we're going to have to get a bigger house. The house is very big. Are you going to sleep already? You're so tired. I'm so tired, Mama. I know you're so tired. Hey, go in your basket with your brother, sweetheart. There you go. I'm sorry, guys. Give me just a second. They're feeling a little ooky because, like I said, they got their last little distemper shot and the rabies shot. And they're ready to go. They got their little medals for purge under fire. They're gonna go in a little. I know that's cheap. So anyhow, how did she get her hair dry? Oh, look at that! He did catch a mouse today. Bucefus got his first one day before yesterday. First cold day. We usually get him come out of the field. First mouse was crazy that morning, but he did really good. Purge, get it? Purge under fire is the shots. Shot, yeah, okay, you get it. Medals, you know, congressional congressional medal of courage, courage. Lay down, sweetie. You're just laying there hovering. Go to sleep. Close your little eyes and go night night. Okay. So anyhow, how did she get her hair? Yeah, this is what I'm saying, Anna, and it's possible, cahoots. Some of, but I got some zingers for you coming, and that's why I wanted to do this tonight, so I could get you guys caught up. Because the way I'd set it up, this was going to be last night, and then Steve and I are coming in and talking a little bit about something tonight that kind of goes with this, and then I'm finishing this up next Saturday, and um, also Steve and I have been doing some reading and some, stuff like that to try to get some ideas for tonight. But anyway, how'd she dry her hair? They didn't have hair dryers. Not one of them said, it's possible. It's possible, Aunt Edna, she could have. I mean, there's lots of different things she could have done. But in the timeline she had, it's very strange. It almost seems like there could have been somebody else there that she maybe knew about, and the way she was acting and everything else. But again, I want to go back to the beginning because there's so many misunderstood facts. There's things made out of whole cloth. We're not going to go through all of them. What I thought I would do is just take you back to what the real facts are. It is a bed and breakfast, yeah. And how many people think, okay, well, so many things, because I was under the impression that, all the locks had locks on the outside of the house. That I mean, the outside of the doors. There's locks on both sides, and I can explain why. The house they lived in on Second Street, which I think is now 92nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, was set up as a tenement home. And what that means, if you really look at the blueprints and everything else, it was for two families. So there was an outside exit and another exit. So they could be separate from each other, very much like a duplex, but instead of side by side on top of each other, there was no hallways. That's weird, right? But not a lot of the houses back then did. Only the ranch style had above ground where it was going to have hallways. It was just the style of houses they were making back then. So in order to get from, one room to the next room to the next room, you're walking through the rooms. So what they did was they had it set up where all the locks were set on the bedroom doors, and you went up the front staircase to get to, say, where Bridget had to went up, slept up in the third floor in the attic, and uh, Lizzie and her sister slept on that floor and used that staircase. Okay. Now, the back staircase is the one that Andrew and Abby Borden, the stepmom, used to go through that way. And they went up to their room. And the only time they would go up those stairs, Lizzie and her sister would go up those stairs if they were going to the sewing room. Hello, Blue. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, you can see you later, sweetheart. Thank you for stopping in. We are going to be here with Steve, so if you're available later, come on in. It's 8 o'clock. So when I started hearing that, I'm like, okay, what else do I have wrong about this? Is maybe I'm thinking about this whole thing wrong. And I started digging, and it started to become important to me because of this. When you are um, basing everything on what you're being told, eventually, like, lies and innuendo and things like that become accepted fact over time. And in that movie, where Liz Montgomery was in, that whole thing about her doing it in the, doing the killings in the nude, came from like a 12-year-old girl's letter that they wrote into the paper. And a lot of times people would just feel the need to, write the prosecutor or write the jailer or write the mayor or write, whoever. And that was a letter. You're going to hear it in this documentary. And I'm thinking, what else just came out of whole cloth? And when you really start digging, we really don't have that many facts. There's not that much evidence. Because if you're going back to that time, 1893, it's funny because it's the same time as the World's Fair and H.H. Holmes was going on and a couple of the other things we have talked about. What was it like there? What was the social level like? Everybody, I've had people tell me, not everybody, but a lot of people tell me, well, it was just weird. The whole setup with her, and, they're not married and they don't have jobs. Well, again, if you were of a certain social stature, you did not work. Your parents, mostly your father, paid for you. You usually had an allowance, and you did charities. That was what was expected of a young lady at that time, to be social and do, God's work. And Lizzie was very involved in a lot of those things. She was in the women's temperance unit and the women's suffrage movement. She was a Sunday school teacher. She cooked meals for less fortunate people. She never missed, she was always there. She did an awful lot for the community of stray animals and things like that. And there's a lot of nasty rumors that's made up about her killing animals and chopping the heads off of cats and things like that. Just made up. There's no substance, there's no fact, there's no evidence whatsoever that that ever happened. In fact, there's more evidence that that never happened. So I started digging, and I wanted to go back to the facts and see what happened. How could we? Hey, Aussie, welcome in, darling. Aussie Sue, Aussie Sue. So I just thought it was interesting because, again, with things going on today, pardon my glasses, with things going on today, um, there's a lot of that, where people real quick, like, just read the headlines and maybe don't read the whole story, or maybe the headlines in the first paragraph and they think they understand the whole story, or they're listening to somebody that they trust and that person is just, repeating what they heard. And, it's everything is just askew, you know? Um, and we often think that people are going to lie to us about something so big, but I'm telling you something, they did. They did. Yep. Strict, suppressed, religious. Did women wear those white caps back then? Um, I don't recall seeing any of that. I mean, the white caps. I do remember. I do recall what you're talking about, but I hadn't seen any of that. I can't give you a positive answer on that, but I didn't see any in all the old pictures and things I look back. I think the maids did. I'm trying to remember if Bridget, the maid, the Borden's maid. So I don't think so. Possible though. And it may have had something to do with stature as well, maybe up on the hill where the real high socialites lived. So that was the main issue. The Borden name is very prominent in Fall River, Massachusetts. And a lot of people say that he was the richest man. Andrew Borden was the richest man in Fall River. Far from the truth. He was well to do. I mean, at the time of his death, the amount that he was worth then would probably reach around a half a million now. 500 grand. Um, he was big into real estate. But here's the deal. The Bordens split off. So you had, you could go through the whole lineage, but basically it boils down to this. There was Bordens that were all related that came over on, the ships early. One of the Bordens was the first child to be born, English child to be born on the soil in that area. You trace it all the way back. And eventually, of course, they were very hardworking and made money and made a name for themselves. And then there was one side of the family, one great, I think it was Andrew's great grandfather. I think it was great grandfather. It might have been great great, but I think it was great. Lost all the money. So all those Bordens had to come up on their own or borrow money or whatever. And the thing about it is Andrew Borden, he was from that side of the family. So he was really a self-made man. He had to come up from nothing. And he was, like I said, he did real estate. He started out as a carpenter. He was an undertaker. And at that time, hearing undertaker, you wonder what that means. We all think that he was a guy that, did the coffins and, no, he didn't do any of that. He never touched the bodies. There are rumors out there that he chopped the legs off of bodies to fit them in smaller coffins just to save money because he was such a miser. None of that's true. He never did that. An undertaker at that time was someone who did the undertaking of providing things for the funeral. So from him, he did build some coffins and he did build some furniture and things like that. But what he did was he rented out like all the parlor chairs you would need, like all the different things like that you needed, because at the time, the funeral was your parlor. So you had the funeral in your parlor of your home. And that's the way it was done. And that's how funeral parlor got its name. He was not an undertaker that went out there with the shovels like the pictures you see and all the different stuff like that. So now I know I'm going back and forth, and I've heard that it's very hard for people to hang on. So I'm going to go ahead and say some people like to ride in the front of the roller coaster, and some like to ride in the back, some just ride in the middle. You know, I'm basically doing a little bit of this off the top of my head, and I think you guys are getting it. You look like you're fine. Are y'all good? Y'all comfortable? Y'all hanging with me so far? Everybody look like they're doing good? Okay. So that's the thing that got me. I'm looking and I'm going, her hair's not wet. There's no blood in her hair. This person will be covered, you know, for the most part. I mean, just imagine, right? There you go. Lay the body out in the coffin for a few days, even. Yes, Ted. Yes, yes, yes. And I'll definitely get to that. So that's what started me on it. That's what intrigued me. And then I started thinking about how people destroy other people with rumor and innuendo and assumptions and making stuff up out of whole cloth. And it can really happen today as much, right? And this is something that absolutely, if she didn't do it, her life was destroyed. Now, I can't say she didn't. I'm saying we're looking at the evidence. Do you know what the evidence we have is? We have two bodies, approximately at the time of 9 a.m. Now, all this timeline is based on eyewitness statements. We know how eyewitness statements can be messed up, especially in a little town where a big thing is happening and a lot of people want to get involved. They want to insert themselves into the case and they start saying things, right? So you got around 9 a.m., they believe Abby Borden was killed. Somewhere between 10:30 and 11 a.m., Andrew Borden was killed downstairs in the parlor in the famous couch. We have two bodies. We know that in the house, we know that in the house, right? You enjoying the roller coaster ride, baby? Good for you, baby. That's funny. So we have that. We don't have a murder weapon. That hatchet you keep seeing was absolutely proven not to be. It didn't fit and it was thrown out. So, they put it in a glass case and go, oh, and everybody looks at it and thinks that's the hatchet that did it, the one with the broken handle. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Because the blood on there and the hair that was on there was deemed to be animal blood. You'll hear pig and you'll hear cow. And the reason you hear that is somebody slipped up during the trial and one person said cow, one person said pig. And that's really all they could do back then to test for blood. They could test for blood and tell that it was human or not. They could, and I'm sorry if this ekes y'all out, but they could tell if it was menstrual blood or fresh blood because that does come up in the case. And they could tell difference from animal and human. That's it. They couldn't type blood. Fingerprinting was very, very, very young at that time. There were people out there taking fingerprints and comparing them, but there was no database. You see what I mean? There were some detectives that were out there and they were looking at different things, but it was not, it certainly wasn't what it is today. People in and out, evidence being moved. They searched that place from the roof, all of the land, including the latrine. There was two-hole latrine, but basically a bathroom. It was two-hole latrine with a pool. I mean, but still, they searched everything. And they found several hatchets, none of which fit the murder, which basically we're saying it didn't fit the wounds in the skull. They were too big. Okay. For the blade. And it seemed like the blade was used in this case. Some axe murders, they use the blunt side because the blade sticks and it's harder to, I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. So it didn't fit. That's not the murder weapon. We don't have a murder weapon. Murder weapon was never found. You see? Yeah, several on the farm. Yeah, makes sense to have hatchet with blood. Absolutely, Aunt Edna. So, and this hatchet was found in the cellar in an ash box covered in ash, like it had been there, or somebody was trying to hide it, and they were trying to really push that. There's a couple other things in here that have become basically taken as fact that were just made up during the trial or after the trial. There was an early book written, I think, in 37, which would be 10 years after, by a young lady who said she knew the Bordens, but it wasn't the Bordens on this side of the Bordens, it was the other Bordens. And she made up quite a few of the things that we believe today. And then other authors just went off that book. Now, there's some silly things that really don't make much sense, like the house was stifling or that it was such a hot, sweltering day. And so many times you hear these podcasts, they start out, it was a hot, sweltering day. So we're going to kind of dispel a couple of those little things. And I'm so glad you guys are here early to go on that ride with me because I just wanted to catch you up with a couple of the facts. So tonight, when Steve and I talk about this and reference back and forth, yep, we're gonna get there. Honest to God, it's a trip, right? About the rhyme. Are you kidding me? Is saying. I bet you everybody can remember that. Yep, there you go. There you go. So that's what we're doing tonight. It was a couple things that bothered me. I wanted to dig down and get the truth. And I made this little intro for you guys. And, again, we're on Firefox. Chrome still doesn't have any way of fixing um, their videos being played. And if I play one on another channel to screen share, you're not going to hear it. So we're just going to have to deal with a little bit of the drag on Firefox until we get this done. Because believe me, I'm all over these people because I'm paying for this and they can't seem to get it to work right. But I apologize for that, and it's not on my end. Okay, so here you go. Everybody's singing their little song. You jump a rope while you're doing this. Can you imagine some of those songs? Like all of those, we'll have to do a whole thing on nursery rhymes one night because most of them have horrible. Like "Ring Around the Rosie" is about the plague, and so many dark songs we're giving teaching kids to play jump rope to and hopscotch and whatnot. But anyway, here's a little video that I think might get you maybe in the mood that I made for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Short.
Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, gave her father 41.
Okay, there you have it. I hope you like that. It was like 11 layers on that sucker. I hate to make comments like this, but does she have a funky look in her eyes? Well, I don't know. I mean, I've had people say that she was striking. I've had people say that she was not very good looking. So there's all different pictures there. You saw her as a young girl. She was 34 when this went down. She spent 10 years locked up in jail during the trial. I'm sorry, 10 months, not 10 years. Woo, erase that. And then, so she was 34. Now, her sister was 9 to 10 years older. Okay. A little bit about Lizzie, a little bit about these characters. There's Andrew, the dad, and of course, I told you a little bit about him. I heard that he was very tight, skin flick. And oh, Pam Smith, thank you, darling, for the super sticker. Thank you, baby. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. That's going right to the fund. Thank you so much. Yes, but why? Why was she considered an old maid, a spinster, so to speak? Now, here's the deal. The other character here is, let me see if I can see it, is Abby. Okay, now this is Abby. Um, she was about Lizzie's age during, from the murder. She was around 30, 35, 34 when she married Andrew. Now, this is what went down. Andrew was married prior, and you will see the mother's picture. She died of what we would probably, well, it was called uterine congestion, which was probably more like uterine cancer when Emma, the older sister, was around 9, 10, 11, must have been 12, 13. And Lizzie was 2.5. So Emma really remembered her mom, where Lizzie, not so much. And over time, and she wound up calling Abby mother until about 3, 4 years before the murder. She started calling her Mrs. Borden, just like Emma always did, because Emma remembered her mom. Now, why did Andrew and Abby get together? Well, he was a man with 2 kids, businessman. He worked at many banks. He was, at the time he was retired, he was still vice president of a bank. He still did many rentals and would go out and collect his rent. He was involved in multiple different uh, things like produce and farm stuff like eggs, and they made vinegar, and he was into all different kinds of things, so much so that people would come to the house to buy eggs and vinegar and some of his produce and stuff. There was people in and out of that house all the time. So again, you might want to think, if somebody had gone in there and killed, they would have been in that parlor. They would have stood at the base of those stairs. That's the way that house was set up, and we'll have some things here that'll show you that better. Okay. Um, but Abby was a daughter of, another prominent medium social a family out there. And basically, it was almost like when two kingdoms marry together. The prince marries the princess, and they come together to bring those two kingdoms together to be more powerful. That's kind of what was going down here. She didn't have anybody. She needed his money, and Andrew needed somebody to take care of the house and the kids. You know, I wouldn't say it was a loveless marriage, but they certainly weren't all over each other. It was a marriage of convenience, and they both knew it. And that was also something that was very accepted back then. Okay. So that's your dynamic. Those are your characters. Okay. That's your prominent character. There was a few more. Didn't Lizzie see Emma more as a mother when she was? Yes, absolutely, Sasha Bell. Emma would be protective and didn't want. Yes, Abby Genico. Absolutely. Because the mother, when she was dying, told Emma to look after Lizzie and be her mom. And that's kind of the dynamic it was. So, Lizzie always listened to Emma, and Emma was so much more refined and closed off and less social, quiet. Believe me, or believe it or not, Lizzie was, compared to Emma, she was very social. And that was the one thing that really bugged them, because their dad kept them in this business area, and they thought because of his money they should be living on the hill with the other Bordens. But he knew that he just wasn't welcome because he was from the other side of the Bordens, and they always felt like they should be living better and living higher. There's lots of talk about, he could have had more amenities in the house, and they did have pump water in the kitchen and water in the basement, and things like that, but they didn't have everything that was available. And that was one of the sticky things, that they thought that they should have more and be living more high on the hog, so to speak, and live on the top of the hill with more elite people. So they could only socialize with people in their class. you see. And because, hey, thanks, Lynn. Happy birthday to everybody celebrating a birthday this month. Happy birthday, everybody. If your birthday is in December. Very cool. Thank you. Um, watch the trolls while I'm gone. You got it, Anna Edna. Ted, everybody's got it in here. You're in good hands. Hurry back. So that's another confusing part of it. When you think about that, there's a lady, and I wanted to get her name right because I really respected a lot out of what she had to say. And then I went and wrote it in green, and now I can't see it in this light, but we'll figure it out for you. Her name is Stephanie Corey. Now, Stephanie Corey is a PhD, and she has been studying this case for over 30 years. She actually moved from Florida to Fall River, which is really cool, and got involved in a lot of the things there, like the Historical Society and everything else, just because she really wanted to get to the bottom of this case. And I really like the way she talks. She's kind of cheeky when she gives her interviews. I like that. She's kind of sarcastic. And I wanted to give her homage to her because some of this is exactly where I got from her this next little part here, if I can pull it up. So that's your cast of characters. Okay. Now, let's go back and look at that one more time. Get it right. Sorry again, guys. Not a perfect podcast. We're going to get to that. Okay. The song is actually called A Doggerel. Oh, shit. I didn't mean to do that. All right, let's do this other one. Let me take this one down. So hard to see where this thing is. Let me get it. Okay, this one should be better. Let's see. All right. So this is what's called a doggerel. I had never heard that word before, so I learned something right here, right? Yeah, dedication for sure. That's what I thought. There is literally not one word of this doggerel. This is again a new word for me. That's true or accurate. Lizzie Borden took an axe. It wasn't an axe, it was a hatchet. Actually, it has another name for it. It's more like a roofing hatchet, where it's got like a little notch in it for the nails and a flatter end. It's smaller, kind of handle and everything else. So it was a hatchet. Gave her mother 40 whacks. Well, that's not true. It wasn't her mother. It was her stepmother, and it wasn't 40 whacks. It was 17 to 19. Nobody can seem to get, happy birthday, Pam. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Um, when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. No, it was 11. So, but that wouldn't rhyme very well. But again, literally not one word, because Lizzie was acquitted, court of law, with 12 all male jurors. So she was acquitted. And it seems like what Ms. Uh, Corey says, or Stephanie says, is basically anytime she's ever anywhere she gives a talk or something like that, they always do a show of hands. If you were on the jury, where would you how would you vote? Is there reasonable doubt? And she says every time Lizzie is acquitted, because there just isn't that much evidence against her. Yet for 130 years, everybody's blamed Lizzie. And it's kind of sad. She stayed right there after the trial. Um, you're welcome, sweetheart. She stayed there after the trial, and people wondered, why wouldn't she leave? Well, it was her home. It's all she knew. Me personally, I'd have got out of it. I'd have took that money and I'd have gone on a cruise for the rest of my life and gone to Hawaii or something and changed my atmosphere and everything else. She didn't do that. She didn't do that. She changed her name, which is and was Lizzie Andrew Borden. She's named after her father, and she was christened Lizzie, not Elizabeth. Okay. And after the trial, she bought a house on the hill where she always wanted to live. Not quite on top of the hill, but she got up there in a little house that she called Maplecroft. And I'll show you that. And you'll see pictures of that and stuff too. And that just, that just really got me. And I was like, why would you stay? Well, she was shunned. She put up with a lot of it. But I'll talk a little bit about the end of her life later. But this right here, that's a trip, and how it turns into this kid's nursery rhyme. And kids still at that time would run through her yard singing this song till the day she died. It just doesn't seem fair, does it? Unless she did it. And if she did it, then she was definitely in a prison of her own making, I guess. Very much like I kind of thought about her almost like a ghost, because she just trapped. Hey, Davy, welcome in, sweetheart. Welcome, welcome. Arr. Don't be brought rum. We're going to need it tonight. So that was the deal with the dog roll, which again is interesting because this is the new word. I never knew it was called that. Now, the dog roll and the number of blows, I just told you that was wrong. The house was stifling and contributed to the crimes. Not true. Now, about the house, this was the deal with the house. That house was a private residence until 1996. Nobody could get in that house. So they had to make it all up. So any books written before that that told you what the inside of the house was, they were very tight-lipped about it, unless they got some old blueprints or something like that. The house wasn't stifling. It was actually quite nice. It seems odd to us that you have to walk through each room to get to the next one. I don't know. I don't know whether she did it or not. I'm doubtful at this point. And when I get done next Saturday with the show, where I'm really going to bring in all the extra stuff that's been found out over the past 10 years, and it's funny how these crimes, like 100 years, and then you start getting a lot of information, like with Lincoln or anybody else, because this is what happens, and it really makes sense if you think about it. If people have letters and documents and things like that in the chest in the attic, like that was grandma's chest, and she said, don't ever, yeah, Kevin Bacon probably did it, but, don't let anybody in there, don't give it away, don't do anything, pass it on to the next person, in the family. This is what happens. So you figure a generation, 100 years, and then the grandkids get it and they go, you know what? We could sell this stuff and make money, or we could donate this to a museum or a historical society. And then people start going through the letters and start finding out information that maybe goes with information from a witness that got thrown out or never made the trial, because the police at that time, prosecution and everything else, they had their person. They threw out everything else. In fact, so much so that when the trial was over, now this is going to be a kicker. When the trial was over, the prosecution just basically said, well, to Lizzie, here's all the evidence that we had. Do you want it? And Lizzie says, no. And they gave it to her lawyer, Mr. Jennings. And the lawyer kept it for a very long time. And again, very much like I said with the generations, finally hit a grandkid that said, you know what, I don't want this stuff. Yeah, I know it, and they're right. I don't want this stuff. And gave it to the Historical Society. Okay? And a museum there. There's like 3 of them, so I'm not sure which one got it. Ain't that something? That's how much they didn't want to look for somebody else. What does that tell you? Okay. So I'm going to bring up some stuff next week that'll tell you a little bit more about that. And I thought I would play a little bit of this documentary so we could talk about it and get some of it out. Okay, there was another thing. Now, we talked about the house being stifling. Again, anything before 1996, nobody was in there, that was writing the books, and they had to make it up. It was hot. It was stifling. It the odd dynamic of the family. It caused, repressed anxiety, whatever it was they said. They made it up. They made it up because they couldn't get in the house till 1996. And then once they got in the house in 1996, the books start coming out and saying a little bit different stuff about the house if they did their homework. Some do, some don't. Okay? Because it's in a book doesn't mean it's true. But there you go. The hot day on August 4th, 1892 was a big one, and I'll tell you why. And I already discussed the murder weapon. The murder weapon, the axe with the broken handle that you see, was not the murder weapon. It was determined not the murder weapon. Okay? But you keep getting showed that like it's the murder weapon. Okay? And they do pay for souvenirs. You bet they do. Hot day. Let's look at that one. Why would that be such a big deal? Now, during the day, August 4th in 1893, the Fall River Daily Herald quoted temperatures of 74 at 8 a.m. and 80 at noon. Okay. The Fall River Evening News reported that something called Remington and Davos thermometer in Fall River registered 79 degrees at 11 a.m. Lit my candle oil burner. You're safe now. I'm glad, baby. Okay, and the United States Signal Service, a voluntary observer, gave Fall River temperatures of 67 at 7 a.m. and 83 at 2 p.m. Why does this make a difference? Little things like that, right? It makes a difference because the prosecuting district attorney, Knowlton, in his summation referred several times to how hot it was that morning, and that the barn loft was the hottest place on this hot day in this hot city in this hot country. And that's a direct quote from the transcripts. Now, why would he be doing that? Because Lizzie Borden's alibi, when she wasn't in the house when her father was being killed, she was in the barn, which you can see in the pictures coming up, looking for a sinker. Now, sometimes you hear it called an iron, a piece of iron, or a sinker, because she was getting ready to leave in a couple of days. I think it was the next day, to go fishing with a distant cousin, which they often did. Okay. Um, her sister wasn't even in the house because she was visiting her dressmaker and a friend. She couldn't have made it back and forth. She's out. She had the most solid alibi of all of them. But they were this district attorney was trying to say that there's no way she could be in that barn for any length of time because it was so stifling hot. Now she was sitting there eating pears. She missed breakfast. She didn't eat the breakfast that you guys keep hearing about. She was eating pears because she didn't eat breakfast. She had a little something on the side. Supposedly served that morning was the mutton broth, Johnny cakes, and some cookies, which is weird. Johnny cakes, I looked it up, as pancakes. I bet you knew that, Aunt Edna, Johnny cakes. But she didn't eat. She didn't, nobody was feeling good, and I'll explain that in a minute. But, well, I'll let the doctor do it. But, so she was eating some pears, and it makes sense. They had a big pear tree out there. Everybody apparently came by and ate pears. So she was sitting there thinking about it, going through the box, looking for sinkers because she wanted to go fishing, right? So there you go. So basically, what he was trying to do is totally screw up the connection that Lizzie lied about going to the barn loft that morning to look for sinkers and eat pears. In the process, they created a myth that has endured. You'll see podcasts that go, oh, it was a hot, sweltering day. Now, keep in mind, 84 in those clothes. These guys are wearing suits, women are wearing hats, they're wearing the high neck thing, the long sleeve stuff. Okay, it's going to be hot. Yeah, mutton is sheep. Are you kidding me? So, and again, that's again a myth. It's crazy how people just make up stuff. Apparently, that mutton broth was like 5 days old, sitting on the what do you call that? Like the break front or whatever it is that's next to the table. Oh yeah, lamb. And it wasn't. They had swordfish the day before, and they started feeling sick after that. The mutton was served the night before, and it was served again that morning. Now something was going through the town, and this is again from Miss Stephanie there with her 30 years digging. She said that there was something going through the town that they called the summer sweats. And the summer sweats was supposed to be basically light food poisoning because once they didn't have refrigeration and everything else, and if you kept the food would spoil quicker, and people would just eat it anyway, and they would get like a mild food poisoning, and they would feel nauseous and get all your diarrhea, the whole shebang, and you're sweating. So they would call it the summer sweats. In fact, ask any doctor there will tell you that the whole town, like half the town, was sick. But that'll show up later because a lot of people were thinking that they were getting poisoned because they felt just awful. And the doctor basically said, in fact, Abby, the mom, went to see the doctor that morning or the night. I think it was that morning. I don't want to get it wrong. I can't remember if it was that morning or the afternoon before. It may have been the afternoon before, but it'll clarify it in this documentary. I don't want to get it wrong. But she went to him and said, I think we've been poisoned. It might have been in the milk or the bread. And he said, well, that's silly because if it was in the baker's bread, more people would have the exact same thing. I believe you have the summer sweats. You must have eaten something bad. And then they ate it again for breakfast, which is, gross. So everybody in the house was sick. Bridget was sick, the maid. Um, Lizzie was feeling a little bit ill, which is why she excused herself from breakfast. They very rarely ate together, this family. They all tried to stay away from each other. There was they just didn't enjoy each other's company, and they found ways to keep missing each other. You know what I mean? They worked it out. Like I said, one went up one staircase, one went up the back staircase. All the doors are locked along the way, and they weren't even on the same floor. They just went about their business. There you had it. So that was what was going on. But he was trying to say that it was so doggone hot that there was no way anybody could sit in the barn for 10, 15 minutes or whatever amount of time she said she was sitting in there. Even though people said they saw her going in and saw her coming out. So, but he was trying. And that's how rumors start. This is how stuff starts. And now, 100 years later, people are starting these podcasts. It was a hot, sweltering day, because they're going on what we think is true. Again, fiction can become assumed fact over time if people don't look into it, right? Makes perfect sense. I hope I'm doing all right on time, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to talk so fast to get a lot in a short amount of time. I'm sorry I had to do it this way, but I just had to. So there's also some other things about Lizzie that comes up. Kleptomaniac. Um, whether she took stuff or not, whether she took stuff to get back at her dad or not, it really was a non-issue because here's the deal. There's no proof that she did this. Again, something that's made up. Whispers and, things like that. But I was thinking, what supposedly the arrangement was that if Lizzie went and decided to pick something up, put it in her purse, that Andrew told the shopkeepers, just put it on my tab. So there really wouldn't be any written evidence of that unless the person wrote, you know, she paid for these three things, or she put these three things on the credit, but she slipped this one in her purse. There's no writings like that anybody can find. So if the shopkeeper actually just added it to the list, then it's just going to look like a list, a credit list, right? So there's really no proof that she did this other than a few people saying that they thought they saw her take some things. And it became this big thing that she was a kleptomaniac and she was doing it because her father abused her all her life and she was getting back at her dad and everything else. Hey, sweetie, welcome in, Chris. So, oh, this thing here that destroyed the run of the Porter's Fall River tragedy. There was also a rumor out that she bought up all the copies and would sue somebody who the guy who wrote this book. No, there's tons of copies out there. Never happened. She never did it. She never stopped the printing of the story. The book is out there. You can still get copies of it. In fact, Stephanie says she has 2 copies of it because that was another rumor that went out there. There's like a lightly veiled rumor. It's not one of the really big ones. The troubled family dynamic. Now that's a big one. I personally, for years, was convinced that Andrew Borden was probably diddling with his kids. And I thought that, like I said in the beginning of this, I thought that when people said there was locks on the outside of the doors, oh, that made me go, whoa, are you kidding? That's some trouble going on there, right? So um, apparently not a lot of that's true. There's no evidence to back that up. There is zero evidence to back up anything that she had an affair with her sister or she had an affair with anybody else, with another woman or Bridget, the maid. She didn't even know Bridget's name. She called Bridget Maggie half the time and Annie, other times. She couldn't even be bothered. Keep in mind, these women had to keep their stature. If you go back and watch The Gilded Age, which is a great miniseries, I'm telling you, it really tells you a lot about how these women lived. That was the year. That was New York. How women that of means didn't work. They did charity work. They stayed busy, but they did charity work. They didn't have a job as a clerk in the grocery store. Okay. They weren't allowed to socialize or go to any parties that were the socialites on the hill. They could only socialize with who they were with. See? And they were more strict about that than Andrew was. I'm sure Andrew would love to got one of them married off. It wasn't that he kept them from everybody. It's that he kept them there because he knew he didn't belong with the other Bordens and he wasn't going to. He wasn't going to play that game. And maybe Lizzie got a little bit of that from him. Who knows? That's just a guess. Okay. Also love Downton Abbey. I never saw that. I want to see that, but I hadn't seen it. But watch 1893 if you're interested in how people of this stature had to treat it. I mean, it was a very strict thing. Now, Stephanie said another thing, and I really liked it. It was basically, it was so important. Maybe I can find it if we watch the vid. But it was, oh, here it is. I love this. She said that basically some of the things you've heard about the family troubled family dynamic here, and that Lizzie was such a strange character. She really kind of wasn't when you go back and look at it, and especially the way she lived the last part of her life was quite spectacular. The things she did. You have to watch it. Says, oh, I'm looking for it. I just don't want to order it off Amazon or something. So troubled family dynamic. Yeah, over time, people have really tried to make Abby Borden, the stepmom, like she was just this dominating woman who treated the kids, badly and everything else. And, the dad was miserly. He was tight. He was frugal, but he wasn't quite the way he's been portrayed. Um, and what she said, and I love the phrase she used, she said it was like you're basically demonizing the victims so it almost looks like they deserved and had what was coming. Times don't change, rumors, gossip, fake news. Absolutely, Yvonne. And that's why I'm doing this. That's why this is important to me because it's just as important today to discern the things that we hear that than it was 130 years ago. And like if we can't look back 130 years ago and look at the facts and try to discern what may have happened, we'll never really know. But we can, with some of the things that have come out lately, I think it's a real next Saturday I'm gonna tell you guys about that stuff. But I want you to get a little base first. But man, it helps us discern now, right? It makes us look at things now a little bit different. It makes us look past the headlines and maybe read the paragraph and maybe finish the article and really see what it's about because everything's about clickbait now, you know? And, me personally, and I don't care if anybody else understands this, I know a lot of you guys will get it, but it's important to me because I think it's just as important to tell the truth now and seek the truth now as it was then. Because if this isn't true, this poor woman got her character absolutely shattered and destroyed for 130 years now over lies, rumors, whispers. Yeah, I just played it, honey. How's the song go? Word gets around to the barflies and the Baptists. Yeah, yeah, and that's just it. Somebody says something and they go off of it. So that's how it rolls. So anyway, that was important. Oh, but she said that when you're looking back at that time, it's the 21st century mind trying to explain the behaviors of people who lived 130 years ago. That's something to remember. That's something I always found interesting, including in the paranormal investigation. Like, I've talked about the Civil War and other places, and going in and thinking about who are you talking to? What time period are they from? Because it's imperative if you're going to have communication with this ghost, if you can, that you understand. Yeah, she was acquitted. Um, and it's important to get that. You know what I mean? To understand what time was like. I've talked about my time on the field in Gettysburg, and trying to understand and speak in the ways that, without slang, and try to speak respectful to the way they would have talked to each other. I mean, I'm talking to guys that, beat each other to death with shovels and rakes and, arms and legs in some cases, and God knows what they went through. But I'm trying to remember the time in which they lived, so they would be better to, relate to me and understand that I meant them no harm. You know what I'm saying? The police just went to find the perpetrator quickly. Don't really investigate. True, Yvonne. And that's basically kind of what happened here. But there's a lot of other little things that you don't get to really hear about that I believe are more interesting than the made up shit. You see what I mean? Because there's so much going on. So let me finish this one out. Let's see what's next. I know there's another little card here, and I wanted you to get all this. This is all the information I wanted you guys to have before I talked with Steve tonight. And I should have done it last night, but I'm glad I waited till tonight. Okay. I'm not going to be able to read all that, but Andrew Borden really wasn't a skinflint. Now, in the movie with Elizabeth Montgomery, she makes a statement. She says, 2 dresses a year. You make us just 2 dresses a year. That's all the same 2 dresses I got to rent. No, it wasn't 2 dresses. It was 2 full wardrobes, one in spring and one in the fall. Andrew Borden would pay for both his daughters and his wife to get 2 full wardrobes for the season coming up every year. He gave them an allowance that actually came to the same amount that a teacher of that time, of high stature, not, a lower class teacher that would have been in a lower class area, they made as much as that. He also, at one time, which they said caused the rift, Abby went to him, her sister, Abby's sister, the stepmother's sister, couldn't finish paying her mortgage, was having a hard time keeping it going. And he went and just bought the house and treated it like a rental and helped the sister out for Abby. Nice guy. Sisters got mad and said, "Why are you doing that?" Yes, she was so lovely, Ted. The sisters got mad and said, "You're doing for her, but you're not doing for us." So what did he do? Did he tell them to go, to bite me and, go move on? No. He bought them a house. Hey, hon, how you doing? Welcome in, Facebook user. He bought them a house so they could have a rental and learn a business and go and collect the rent and, handle the issues that come up with this house and everything else. They did it for a little while. They didn't like it. And then he bought it back from them for $5,000. And they split it. It was a lot of money back then. Okay. So little things like that. Now, was he eccentric? Yes. Was he probably, stuck in his ways and, a little frugal? Sure. He did weird things like when he would go and collect the rent, he would take a basket full of eggs and sell the eggs at the same time while he was collecting the rent. I mean, he was always trying to make money. In fact, his last walk home, which sounds so sad, but his last walk home along the sidewalk, he looked down and he saw a broken lock. I think it's weird, right? Just a broken lock laying in the street. That's kind of odd. But it might have fell off, one of those collector guys that come by and gets all the metal and they take it away. And I'm not sure why a broken lock would be there, but I'm sure there's a reason. Because I thought broken lock, where was it missing off the house? Did somebody break it? I was thinking that, but no, it apparently has nothing to do with that. But he found a little broken lock and he thought to himself that it could be fixed. So he picked it up and put it in his pocket. He was very frugal and he was always doing stuff like that to try to keep it going, because here's a man that had to make it from his own against a lot of odds under all that heavy veil of the rich Bordens up the hill. So there you go. That is a hell of a lot of money back then, isn't it? And it was a lot more than he paid for it. I mean, he really added on a lot, and they didn't want to do it. They wanted to go back to the stuff that they were doing and the charities and everything else. They didn't want to be bothered. So, you got to give them a little bit. Okay, that's an important one. That's an important one. Let me see if I can go back here. It goes so fast. Dadgummit. Here we go. Let's see if I can stop it. Now, here we go. Those who knew her loved her. Now, this is in the words of Miss Stephanie, PhD. I know I'm so goofy. Stephanie Corey, PhD. She said, those who knew her loved her. Those who did not know her gossiped about her and wrote books about her. And the myth was born. Makes sense, doesn't it? And, a lot of us are kind of living that today. And I will go back to that. Here's Lizzie. That's Lizzie in her later life. You don't really get to see a lot of those. Was a teetotaler. One second. Go back and get one more. That's Miss the lady I've been telling you about. I'm gonna tell you this. I need to see that picture one more time. I have no way of seeing what's coming up, so bear with me. There she is, right there. That's Lizzie. Now I'm going to show you another picture next week. This is her. She's out on a picnic. You saw in the beginning the little video I made where you saw her in a carriage. You saw her picnic. You saw her with her dog. When Lizzie Borden died, she still had most of the money that she had inherited. Now, when she died, the inheritance went to her sister and her, and they split it. And for a while, they lived together. It was rumored that she lived with another woman and had a lesbian affair. Again, is that any of our business? It's really not. But they're saying this about her, and I got to talk about it because it's not true. The lady that they're saying this about was an actress, and I can't remember her name right now. I'll have it for you next Saturday, though. Was basically Lizzie liked the theater. And back then you had these little theater companies that would get together and go from town to town and, try to hook up with rich people and get money. And Lizzie was very enamored with this theater company, although she did not drink until the day she died. She was very into temperance. And she really liked this one actress, and the actress would come and visit, but she would come with her troupe. And Lizzie would throw parties and invite people and everything else, and they would have wonderful parties. And that's what pissed her sister off. She couldn't deal with it. She just said, I can't be around these people. And she left. And they had a little row, and she took off and left and went and lived by herself. And they never really spoke again, as far as we know, unless some letters or stuff turn up. But that's what happened. At one point in time, she even tried to help this woman out and got her and her boyfriend a house. And eventually, very quickly, a lot quicker than people think, they split, and that was it because Lizzie found out that she didn't really want a friend. This troop just wanted money, and she didn't like being used. I think the woman had been used enough, don't you think? So that's what that's it. And then I wanted to please absolutely give credit to Miss Stephanie here. And I have a little bit here, probably sniff glue too, probably. But there you go. Um, and I wanted her to tell you something about Lizzie here. And I wanted you to see her because she's got so many lectures and stuff on YouTube. You can go and see them and really listen to her. She's fantastic. She does a much better job than I do. So listen to this here. There she is. There's Lizzie.
Lizzie was a teetotaler and a temperance girl, so it wasn't like it was drinking and stuff going on. There's no evidence that Lizzie was a lesbian at all. In fact, there are letters that exist, according to Michael Martins, the curator of the Historical Society, in a private collection that she had a long-term romantic relationship with a man, but the family won't release the letters because they just don't want the notoriety.
Well, how about that? Now,
Girl, so it wasn't like
there
it was
is
drinking.
another pic. If I can catch
was
it
not
just
was
right,
a teetotaler and a temperance.
right there.
Was a teetotaler.
Ooh, I had it. Guys, I got to come up with different ways to get these pictures up here for you. I apologize. They don't all work. Okay. Right there, you see Lizzie peeking, right? Just a little, almost a little smile on her face, right? Sitting next to her is her driver, her longtime driver. Now, this driver was with her for a very long time, and his whole family loved her. Sitting next to her, the smiling woman next to her, is the driver's wife. They were all going on a picnic, his whole family and Lizzie and everybody else. And at the time this picture was taken, this lovely little smiling lady here sitting next to Lizzie was pregnant, and she was pregnant with a little girl. And when that little girl grew up, Lizzie was still alive, and she remembers Lizzie. And she was in an interview that Stephanie talks about, and said that when the little girl grew up, she says, I remember Aunt Lizzie. She was a lovely woman. She was kind to animals. She was kind to me. She loved everybody. And and people loved her. And she said that something along the lines of, I wish more people had given her a chance. So I wanted to share that with you. I thought that was a different look. That last little blast at the end there is what I was trying to explain, that that's why after 100 years you start hearing new things come out, because people will open the trunks and say, I don't want this, right? And they give it to the museum, or they try to sell it to somebody, or on eBay or whatever. And these letters come out, and these were handed over to is in a private collection, and the people don't want notoriety, but there are stacks of letters written back and forth with Lizzie and her boyfriend. Now, I personally like to know who that boyfriend is. I kind of have an idea after digging around, but I don't want to say right now. I'll tell you at the end of Saturday. If somebody in the chat, one of my mods, reminds me, I'll tell you who I think it is. I don't know. I mean, it would just be a guess off the top of my head. But I also made some phone calls to the historical society in Fall River, and I talked to them a little bit. Now, you probably wondering, again, like I said in the beginning here, what got me started on this? I remember I was on a podcast with somebody else. We were just jibber jabbering, having a good time. Lizzie Borden came up, and one of the guys on the show was, I'm going to say, cocksure that she did it. She did it. I know she did it. This is this and this is that, yada, yada. And then he said something that stuck with me. He said, it would have had to have been someone who knew the people and really hated them. There would have had to have been a buildup of anger. There would have had to have been a lust for blood. There would have had to have been, just years of built up, animosity toward this person for someone to do that to somebody else. He said it was such a rare occurrence for somebody to do this that nobody else other than someone who knew the victim would have done such a thing. So it had to be Lizzie. And I was a cheeky monkey back then too. And when it came around to my time, I said, I'm sorry. I disagree with everything that was just said. I don't know any different, but I disagree on this point. And I said, how close was that house to the train tracks? And I left it right there. And anybody who picked it up knew what I was talking about. And that's one of the things that intrigued me. So let's watch the first part of this little ditty here. It's about 10 minutes. If I do it just right, we'll be just about out of here on time. Might be able to grab something to eat before I come back on with Steve. But here you go.
There's a house in Fall River that will cause you to shiver, even though there's no chill in the air. And on warm August nights, when you turn off the light, you can see her standing on the stairs. She laughs as she glares into the guest room upstairs, and she quickly moves down to the parlor. And if you're very quiet, a muffled sob fills the night. When she whispers, you disappointed me, Father. Without saying any more, she glides out the door to the barn and then up to the loft. She has sinkers to find. Or is it a piece of iron this time? Don't get confused, Lisbeth of Maplecroft. When next she appears, different clothes she wears. Was it a bloody dress she was bearing? But her arms are stained red with the blood that she shed as are her hands and the hatchet she's carrying.
Good night, Lynn. Take care, baby.
Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. And when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. You know, I must have been around 7 years old when I first read that verse. The legend of Lizzie Borden had traveled time and distance and culture and found its way to Atwood, Oklahoma, population 60. Although I'd argue that my little town was the cultural center of the universe, some folks might find it incredible that a 100-year-old murder case from New England could be so well known in the hinterland. But arguably, the Lizzie Borden case is the most famous in American history and folklore, and worldwide only Jack the Ripper is more famous. Now, it's difficult to explain why a case captures the imagination, but the Lizzie Borden case is the thing of which legends are made. So travel along as we go back to 1892, Fall River, Massachusetts, and the legend of Lizzie Borden.
There were no less than 200 Borden families living in Fall River in 1892. Judge Robert Sullivan took liberties with the famous quote when he wrote, "In Fall River, the Durfees and Braytons spoke only to the Bordens, and the Bordens spoke only to God." The house at 92 2nd Street was the home of Andrew Jackson Borden, his wife Abby, and two spinster daughters, Lizzie and Emma. Andrew Borden was a tall, thin man of 72 years. He was tight-fisted and miserly, and his family lived well beneath his means.
Now I'm going to pop in here. Can you guys hear me? I got to wait for the delay. That delay can get me in a lot of trouble sometimes. I'm here to tell you, man, people are mad. Can you hear me okay? This is Lizzie's mama, and this is Emma when she was younger. This is Lizzie's. Okay, good. So I wanted to tell you right away, I wanted to stop it because you're already being, just tricked here. Do you hear how they're describing him? Miserly, well below their means. That's true. He did live below his means because he could have had a bigger house and he could have had electricity was just coming in. He could have had some other things. He was just used to living like he was. I mean, to take that and just all the narrative being pushed, and they're already lulling you into a narrative, right? And I'm not 100%, Kevin, whether that could be that's as good as any explanation right there, right? Caught it right? Yeah, exactly, Anna. Now this is what I'm saying. Thrifty isn't miserly. Hey, look, can you imagine what they say about me? I could squeeze in a damn quarter to the eagle screams. I mean, it's just the way I was raised. I do have a little Scottish in me, and natives were never big on wasting things. So, am I living way below my means? Probably, but again, I'm also practical. So there you go. But that's her mama. And I'm going to point little things out. I'm not going to stop it every time, but I'm going to talk over it sometimes. So forgive me for that. It's just for a time thing, okay?
His first wife, Sarah, had suffered from unusual spells and had died when Lizzie was 2 years old. Abby Durfee, a 37-year-old spinster, was his second wife and stepmother to Lizzie and Emma. A short, heavy-set woman, it was difficult to see what Andrew and Abby saw in each other. Everyone knew that Andrew married Abby because he needed a full-time worker, and Abby needed Andrew's money. Between them, they brought together the two most influential families in Fall River, the Durfees and the Bordens. The Bordens' house was not the palatial estate that their name suggested. Although Andrew was very wealthy, the Borden home was as bleak and austere as those in a Dickens novel. They lived near the business district, not on the plateau called the Hill, where the socially elite resided.
It must have been horribly dismal Yet to live under those circumstances and know that your father's very rich must have been very irksome. The house itself, and I think this is a real strong evidence of how stingy the man was. If you remember, the 1890s were known as the gaslight era. They didn't have gaslight. They could have had electricity. They didn't have running water. They didn't have toilets. They didn't have a bathtub. And in the 1890s, middle-class people had those. And certainly people in his financial condition could have had that and a lot more. They had hand pumps. They had a pump in the kitchen. They had a pump in the barn. They had water closet in the basement. The toilet arrangement in the basement is what I would call an indoor outhouse. And there was a big pot in the basement into which rags, dirty rags, were thrown. Lizzie had a maid to talk to. Bridget was a pleasant, sort of outgoing Irish woman in her mid-20s. Emma was very quiet and very reserved.
And you would have had two environments, the working class people and the upper crust society. Lizzie Borden was trapped between these two societies because her father was a miser and they lived in the working class society. And she always wanted to achieve the ultimate goal of climbing the fashionable hill and living with the upper crust.
Perhaps.
Okay, now some of that's true, but I'm pretty sure this chat is very sharp. So I'm pretty sure you can see through it after the things I said. You see what I'm talking about, right? This is 94, I believe this documentary came out. And I absolutely love the country lawyer thing. I think he's adorable. But even at the end of it, the end of it you'll see next Saturday, was again, he came to a conclusion. And I can't fault people for their opinion, but what are you basing it on? Did you go back to the evidence? I told you what the evidence was. You have two dead bodies, you have the blood stain. The timelines were based on this fact and this fact only. That witness statements place the time of Abby's death because of certain things that were going on in the house, and you'll hear more about that later. But the time between her death and his death was based on the fact that the blood puddle around her head, and again, I'm sorry if I'm upsetting anybody, but hang on, it's a bumpy ride, started to get a film across the top, so it started to get thick, where his blood wasn't. So they basically did an autopsy right there. Put him on the table, put some canvas on the table in the parlor, and did an autopsy, a makeshift autopsy there, basically to get the stomach contents, and then sent the stomach contents out to someone to analyze it out of town. Of course, the town didn't have any of that. And found out that her food was a little less, not decomposed. What's the word for it? Her just say decomposed. So her food was less. So, and his was more. So they made it about an hour difference. And they say an hour difference, and then they make it an hour and a half. And then sometimes you hear it's a little longer than that. So they digested. Thank you, sweetheart. Decomposed, digested. So So that was their timeline, and everything in everybody's alibi is based on that. They didn't stick a thermometer in the liver. They didn't do any of that stuff. Hey, Vixen Doe, they didn't do any of that. It was based on the film on the blood and the digested or undigested food, the amount of difference it was. So if one of them happened to have more digestive enzymes in their body, that whole timeline is just, but everything is based, a person's life was based on that. That's it. That's what you have. You have no murder weapon. You have no witness. You have a couple of people that have, kind of some sticky alibis. The only one that's got a good alibi is Emma. She was out of town and couldn't have made it back and forth. Although some books, there's at least 6 books out there that make that her the killer. And then there's Lizzie was the killer. Then there was, Lizzie hired somebody to kill him. The maid did it. Lizzie and the maid were in on it, and all this kind of stuff. Didn't even know her name, but they're having a lesbian affair and they were in on it. Although the day the trial was over, Bridget got on a train and went to Montana, was never heard from again, never spoke about the case. Didn't have any extra money. She was still a maid. She was trying to make it, hack it out of whatever she had to. but she didn't go and buy a big house somewhere with lots of money, and she didn't hang out with Lizzie. So never spoke about the case to the day she died, not even on her deathbed. So there you go. Wanted to say that. This one guy was talking about the Mosley thing, and I'm not 100% when the electric was really available, but didn't we talk about it in the Chicago World's Fair that electric was kind of introduced there with Tesla and Edison and all that kind of mess? And I remember Edison was showing that off, and they even had it in the Gilded Age, even though they messed it up a little bit. It was basically at the Chicago Fair and a couple of other small exhibits, but I don't know that it was that readily available. But of course, the gas was. But so some of that's true. But listen to the narrative, the words, the push towards, oh, the house. It was stifling. It was hot. They hated each other. What were they doing? Married, ugh, spinster, spinster, spinster. You know, it's really crazy. Late 1890s. Thank you, sweetheart. Sasquatch did it. You know what? Could have been, because axe. Everybody had an axe. It was right there. Everybody was chopping heads off of chickens and whatnot. Right there, chopping wood. That's why it's not as rare as people think, and I aim to prove it. Here we go. Almost a little more.
Symptomatic of a darker, more sinister side, Miss Lizzie Borden had another problem. She was also a petty thief.
Lizzie would go to McQuarrie's and shoplift. It was so well known that the clerks would watch her, make a list of what she stole, send Andrew the bill, and he would pay for it.
The daughters were jealous of their stepmother and looked upon her as an interloper and a threat to their inheritance. Lizzie especially exhibited a brooding hatred with sudden outbursts of hostility towards her stepmother. After an argument over property rights 5 years before, Lizzie no longer called Abby mother, but rather Mrs. Borden. The older daughter, Emma, was 42 years old and still lived at home. She was dominated by everyone around her, especially her headstrong younger sister. On the other hand, Lizzie Andrew Borden had inherited her father's name and his chilly disposition. She was red-haired, bright, ill-tempered, and arrogant. At 32 years, she felt life was passing her by. With a sizable allowance of $4 a week, she despised her father's miserly ways. On any given day, you could see Andrew Borden dressed in morning clothes, making his daily rounds, personally collecting rents, while at the same time selling eggs from a basket that hung from his arm. The only jewelry he wore was a gold pocket watch and a small gold ring that Lizzie had given him. Mr. Borden always stopped at his 3 banks and the newly completed A.J. Borden building. The hot, muggy morning of August 4th, 1892, was little different from others. But the previous day had been a day of unusual events. It had begun when Abby Borden paid an unscheduled visit to Dr. S.W. Bowen.
Members of the family had been sick recently. Mrs. Borden came to me Wednesday morning and said that she was very much frightened, for she thought she had been poisoned. She and Mr. Borden had vomited all night, and she feared the poison had been from the baker's bread or the milk. Miss Lizzie and Bridget had been sick with the same symptoms, and it was their belief that an enemy had attempted to kill the whole family.
Later the same morning, Lizzie visited a drugstore and attempted to buy a deadly poison from druggist Eli Bentz.
This party came in and inquired if I kept prussic acid. I informed her that we did. She asked me if she could buy 10 cents worth, and I says, well, my good lady, it is something we don't sell unless by prescription from a doctor, as it is very dangerous to handle. I understand she wanted to put it on a sealskin cape.
Lizzie's unusual conduct continued during an evening visit to her friend Alice Russell.
During the evening, Lizzie came to see me. She came alone and stayed till about 9 o'clock. She spoke of her father and mother and her being sick the night before. Lizzie said, sometimes I think our milk might be poisoned. Mrs. Borden thought she had been poisoned, and she called Dr. Ballin to treat her. Lizzie spoke about believing her father had enemies and spoke of a man who came there and wanted to rent a place and of a quarrel. Then Lizzie said to me, I am afraid somebody will do something. I don't know, but what somebody will do something.
After Lizzie returned home from Miss Russell's, she found that her Uncle John Morse was staying the night at the house. Emma was visiting friends in Fairhaven and would be gone a week or so. That night, a neighbor was awakened by a cracking of wood from the fence on the Borden property. It continued for 4 or 5 minutes. Then it stopped, and the house on 2nd Street slept.
And there's Miss Elizabeth Montgomery in the movie Lizzie Borden. Did a wonderful performance, by the way. Absolutely wonderful performance. So, yes, it does sound like she's setting the scene. But if you go back and you read the transcripts again, there were 2 other people in that pharmacy, right? I did. She was good. And he really wasn't even sure if it was, Lizzie. If you heard what he said, and they had talked to him again, and he's, it could have been her. I'm not really sure. It was a busy day. So, I mean, could have been her, not really sure. Isn't enough to hang somebody. Reasonable doubt. Okay. That's all I'm saying here. Reasonable doubt. It was reasonable doubt 130 years ago against all odds, against these things. Again, I don't know if she did it or not. I just can't figure out how in the world she could have in the timeline. So I'm going to address that more next Saturday. I wanted to get you guys caught up and get you ahead, and I'm really glad. I'm so grateful that you guys just impromptu came in here at 6 o'clock, 2 hours earlier than our regular show, and some of you were able to make it, because I really love you guys. You know that. And the people that come here and are here all the time, they kind of get to know me, my style, my way. And my number one thing is to just that you have a good time when you come in here and you go and me with all my, it's not a perfect podcast, and there's mistakes and there's technical issues. Some of them are my fault. A lot of them are my fault. Some of them are just technical issues that I can't do anything about. I've been, on these people with Chrome and StreamYard. The way it drags like that just makes me nuts, especially when I spend so much time making effective videos and intros just to get you guys in the mood, Well, again, I don't know. Which one are you talking about the proof? Someone came in asking for strange substance, any given by script, I'd remember. Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. Abusing Lizzie and Emma. Yeah, there's absolutely no proof on that. That was in 2 books early. I want to say, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was like in the 40s or early 50s. A couple of books like bounced off each other and kind of came up with that. Must have been because it was locks on the doors, and and he had like 2 maids when they were younger before he met Abby and was able to get that marriage arranged again, meeting 2 families. It was helping both out. Um, there's no evidence, there's no proof. It's just something that's been snowballed over time. Okay. I can't say I wasn't there. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't in the house. But as far as I know, at this point in time, there's no proof. Oh, thank you, Ted. I love you, baby. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you so much. Every bit of that goes, I promise you, because when I say something, I mean it. Okay. And I appreciate you so much because you're keeping the show on the air. It's hard times for everybody, and I appreciate every nickel, every thumbs up, every share, everything. But because I really care, I need to address something else, and the only way I know how to do this is head on. So it has come to my attention, and I hope you all will just bear with me here for a minute and try to give me an idea of, what should I do with this? Because this is like really nuts. Apparently, there is an absolute tsunami, from what I hear, of people, big giant wave, constant turmoil here. Imagine, if you will, okay, of people that are so worried about me, worried about me, little old me, right? They're so concerned about me and this podcast that they will, at all hours, apparently, of the day and night, call people that I know to ask them, acquaintances, and ask them, why does Cisco do that? If Cisco would interview better, I'd watch her. If Cisco wouldn't interrupt people, I can't tolerate that. She doesn't let people talk. She cuts people off. You bet I do. they're saying something I don't want to hear, they're getting cut off. It's my podcast. If I can tell by their energy and the micro expressions in their face as good as I can see it on this lousy system, and I can feel the energy that's coming to something I don't want on my podcast, I will stop you. Yeah. They're bothering other people because now let's keep in mind, this is out of, it has to be, right? Out of just deep, heartfelt concern for my well being and this podcast. They're offering all kinds of information, like the intro's too long, too short. The episodes are too long, maybe too short. Maybe they should be cut up in 6 parts. They're saying, some of them like the guests, don't like the guests, think I should have on other guests. Little do they know I've asked those guests to come on. They won't come on unless they're paid $150 to do it. But I'm not going to call that guest out and tell you that. I'm just going to say, I'll think about it because I have some dignity. I have some, not dignity. Dignity is the wrong word. I have been taught to not drag everybody through the mud just because you can. Thank you, darling. Vixen Doe, thank you, sweetheart. So here's the deal. Apparently, like I said, it's like a tsunami. It's a plague of people bothering people I know because they want to call them out of concern for my well-being and the well-being of this podcast. They have all kinds of things that they're offering, to help me out because apparently they have podcasts that are extremely. Oh, wait a minute. They don't have podcasts. It must be because they just know better as a listener what they want to see and probably think that I should change it to suit them. Okay. So here's a little scenario, and I want to ask you what you think about this. Imagine, if you will, that I've decided to have a party at my house. Okay. And I've sat down. Oh, sweet. Thank you, honey. Thank you, darling. And I'm not doing this for stickers. I'm doing this because I believe in putting crazy right on the front porch where I keep an eye on it. You guys know me, or you should if you're paying attention. Okay. And I'm a Jersey redhead. I don't put up with a lot of shit. Right. So now you got to think about a kind of person that would do that, but that's okay. Because I'm sure, again, it must be out of deep concern for my well being and the well being of the podcast. So I'm having a party at my house and I make invitations. It's got a little color theme. You know how I am about my font and stuff. So, I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to pick a theme and I'm going to invite, come on over. We're going to talk about this. Please come. Welcome to my home. I open the door. You come in. I show you that I've put out cheese and crackers, cheap wine and expensive crystal, because that's like how we like to serve it here. Nice, cold Boston lager. If you don't like that beer, bring your own. Welcome. Everybody's welcome. Come in, sit down, make yourself to home. Now you come in my house. Everybody's having a good time. Everybody's sitting around chatting and visiting and socializing. It's nice, right? And then all of a sudden, you got somebody sitting on the couch starting to bitch about the cheese and crackers. The free cheese and crackers. Get where I'm going? They're drinking my beer. Okay? Having a good old time. But the whispers start. I don't like this couch. I think she should move all her furniture around. The feng shui would be so much better. I know. And if I lived here, I would do this. I don't like the art on the walls. I don't like the color the walls are painted. I don't like the rug. You get where I'm going with this? You come into my house and tell me how to arrange my furniture, what I should have on my walls, how I should have my art. You're eating my cheese and crackers and drinking my wine, my cheap wine in fine crystal. And you're drinking my beer. And you're messing with the vibe in the room. because everybody was having a good time until you started bitching about my couch. Yeah, exactly, Ted. So, my word to you would be step away from my fucking brie, put down my beer. I will get your coat and you can show yourself out. In my house, I was raised as Jersey Italian, and they were real Jersey Italians. And I can remember one Thanksgiving, my cousin got a little out of hand, and my aunt just very carefully picked up a green olive. Every time I see green olives, I think about it. And bounced it down the table at her, and she said, called her name, and I won't say it here. She said, "Hey, do you have an idea that when you're at a social gathering, especially one in my home, and there's a line you're not supposed to cross?" Oh, let's cut to the pearls. Oh, are you saying that, I'm getting up close to it? No, honey, look behind you. I'll get your coat. You can show yourself out. Stop eating my cheese. Hear what I'm saying? That's what we used to call the walk of shame. If you weren't walked to the door and that door wasn't open for you, you were leaving for a reason. You better get out quick. When I was helping out bouncing down at the Headliner in my early days, learn how to bartend, all the bouncers and stuff we used to have a little joke. Says, "Yeah, one more beer and that guy's going to be bouncing gravel." How far do you think you bounce? Depends on how far I throw 'em. Now let's think about the person whose heart is so big and intentions are so good that they would call people all hours, apparently. Like I said, it's a tsunami of people who are complaining about how I interview and why I cut that person off. How many times have you seen me apologize to a guest because I said, "I'm so excited. My adrenaline's just pumping like crazy. I didn't mean, but you said something. It just reminded me. We're just bouncing off, and there's no problem with the guest." Sometimes I talk to my guests 2 hours after an episode, sometimes an hour or 2 hours before. I've had lawyers, attorneys, consultants for CNN on my show that have asked me before the interview, "Cisco, I'm not really good with social stuff. I tend to get off track. Do you mind if we do a little outline so I can make sure I get all this information out? And if I start getting off track, would you interrupt me and get me back on?" Absolutely. Am I going to tell you that that's what I did? No, because it'll bring disgrace to that person. It'll embarrass that person. I'll take it. It's my podcast. Be mad at me because I keep interrupting them. If you're saying something on my show and I don't want to hear it, you better believe I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to do it careful the first time. I'm going to try a second time. After that, you're going to get mugshot off, and then you're going to get knocked out, and then you're going to get blocked. I don't have time for this kind of shit. Because I'll tell you something I've learned in my 60 years on this earth. You aren't calling other people because of your concern and your love for me or this show or the people in this chat or the people who listen to it later. You're calling to bitch. And you're hoping that person will bitch with you. That's called gossiping. And other than prostitution, is probably the oldest profession because in some cases it really is a profession. There's the door. That's right, Kat. Yep. So here's the thing. Now that you know why you're doing it, and you knew why you were doing it, because people who aren't doing anything like to criticize other people who are. I'm sure that when the pyramids were built, there were two lazy bitches leaning up against the fence complaining about everybody else that was working. I could do that better. Oh, that Pharaoh. He picked a gauche color of gold. I wouldn't have done that. I would have done it pink and stripes with blue. Bitch, 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 bitch. Complain, complain, complain. Misery likes company, doesn't it? Let me give you another idea. Acquaintance friend. If you're calling, messaging, DMing, emailing, here's my email, journeythroughthegate@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. Why aren't you asking me why I do something? Because you know the answer you're going to get. depending on how you approach me and in my general mood. Because I usually tell you when I'm doing the podcast. If I apologize to the guest, I'm sorry, I'll shut my mouth. You'll see me. I'll actually cover my mouth. I'm listening and I'm thinking, but I'm trying not to blurt something out because I'm so excited to talk to this person. So if that bothers you, I apologize. Please stop eating my cheese. Let me get your coat. Let me show you to the door. There's absolutely a dial. There's a million podcasts out there. Million. There's some absolutely professional ones that I absolutely flabbergasted by the consistency of how wonderful they are. Most Notorious, Mysterious Circumstances. Good friend of mine, Justin Rimmel. Fantastic. Lots of awards. Eric, Unseen Paranormal. Lots of awards. iTunes, Spotify. Absolutely wonderful gentlemen. I could sit here and name them all night. A lot of them are very good friends. Never once thought to tell me how to do my podcast. And they have some validity behind their opinion and their advice. You know why? Because they're adults. And they understand me and that I'm trying to do this my way, uphill both ways by myself. I will make mistakes. There will be issues. There will be technical stuff, but we're here to have fun and we're here to learn from each other. So here's something else we can learn. Just in case you guys hear somebody that's calling other people that are asking other people why I do something. In 60 years on this earth, and this one, listen hard. 60 years on this earth, there have been 3 people, and I thought about it, 3 people that would have the absolute unmitigated gall and the balls to think that they could speak for me. One of them is dead. The other 2 ain't here. If you want to know why I'm doing something, you ask me. And this is what a friend does. If somebody, and it's happened many times over the years, people have DM'd or called me or messaged me, what's wrong with Steve? Why did Steve do this? Why does it, oh, wait, stop right there. First of all, if you want to know why Steve did something, call Steve. Second of all, don't talk to me about Steve. Steve is my friend. That's what friends do. So this veritable tsunami of people, I hear they may even have jackets. There might be meetings. There might be interventions, that they're planning. I don't know. They sit, maybe, they even cry because they're so worried about me. So here's what you do. Next time you have a meeting of people that are concerned about Cisco and this podcast, and my guests who are, there's puddles of tears for my guests who don't give a shit about this stuff. Okay. What I need you to do is make a list of all the things that's wrong with this podcast. The music should be different. I think it should be more catered to my liking. And the pictures, I don't like the pictures, the holidays, and I don't like that. And I don't like and you just, the way you interview, and it's just, oh my God, we got to save her. Take your tear-stained list of all the things that you don't like about me and fold it in half. Make a nice sharp crease, because obviously there's some kind of ADD, OCDs going on there maybe. Fold it again. Make sure it's even. Make sure it's precise and perfect. Fold it again and shove it up your ass. Because the people who have something behind them, little validity to their advice, and not shoving it down my throat. This is my home. These are my friends. These are my acquaintances. These are people that I enjoy seeing every week. And if you're having a problem with how I'm doing my podcast, I look forward, so forward to seeing your podcast. Go show us how it's done. Make it perfect in every way. And even then, you don't get to come in here and tell me how to do mine. but you'll be doing something other than gossiping and bitching about somebody else who's doing something. That's all the time I'm going to take for my listeners on that. I hope I made it clear. You are welcome to take any leftover cheese. Take your beer on the way out. Don't drink and drive. Open it when you get home. They can stir the shit all they want, but that's where they're going to be, down there stirring the shit. You see what I'm saying? If I had a guest on here that had a problem and went to somebody else and told them they had a problem, you guys don't know what I protect you from. I'm not going to come in here and say, that son of a bitch author is so highfalutin, he wants $150 and name the names and put it all out there. I'm not doing that. What does that gain anybody? That's tearing people down. We're trying to lift people up here. This is me. I keep it real. The only thing I got fake on me, I'm not even wearing fake eyelashes. These are my freaking eyelashes. So when you take that note, you stick it up there, twist a little bit, because maybe you're going to find the sensation you've been looking for. You ain't going to find it here. I'm not riled. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm done. When I say that, I mean it. Clear? So please don't go ask other people why I'm doing things. Ask me. Talk to me. I dare you. Because people that do that are cowards. You want to come here and you want to talk to me? You're not coming on this podcast to talk about it. Because I'm not taking that time from my people. This is for them to feel better about things. And that's why I did this before another one, because I knew I was going to do this. And now I'm due on another show. Steve is going to be showing up. If you want to come with us, there will be refreshments. There will be entertainment. There will be laughs, and there will be fun. You know? And I don't talk about other people's podcasts. I love the people that I'm involved with in podcasts. And those that I don't, I just don't. I don't sit here and badmouth them. Why do you feel the need to go around and badmouth me? I wouldn't do it if I were you. Okay? So there we are. Love you too, Big Cole. Love each and every one of you. But I got to get off here and get on another show. And I haven't even sent Steve the invite yet. So I got to go. I love you all. See you on the other side. It's going to be just a few minutes late because I got to send him an invite. I couldn't set up 2 shows. But we're going to get this taken care of for you. As far as, I hope you know, I didn't end this exactly the way I wanted to. But we are going to finish it next Saturday. So go look into Lizzie this week and understand. People who knew her loved her. People who didn't gossiped about her and wrote books. People that are gossiping about me aren't even doing that. So let it go. Final warning. Okay? All right. See you on the other side, guys. I love each and every one of you. Thanks for being here tonight. See you in about 5 minutes. Good night, everybody. Love you.